Okay, welcome to the Swedish Junior Hockey Podcast. Today's guest, a little bit of not a Swedish name, Morgan Zeba, or how do you pronounce the last name?
No, Zeba is fine. Yep.
Okay, so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Tell us, who is Morgan, and why in the world would I have you on, a representative for SPiideo, and what is SPiideo? Let's start with you.
I'm Morgan Zeba. I work as a director of sales for SPiideo. It's a Swedish video analytic company. We're based down in Malmö in Sweden, the south part of Sweden. We sit about close to 100 people in our organization, and we're spread out all over the world, I would say.
So tell us about SPiideo. For those who don't know, okay, the North American hockey market is used to, we had sport. We were talking about hockey, Svensk Hockey TV or Sportway before, and I think this is a good kind of similar discussion about technology and how does that fit into, how do you build the athlete and really focus on building the hockey IQ part of the athlete, and specifically about juniors. So talk about what is SPiideo, and for those who don't know.
We bring fully automatic sport recordings and analytics and streaming on a global scale to all levels, I would say, all team sports, from the elite to the amateur, from senior to youth. Yeah. I would say it's fairly good explanation of what we're doing in that sense.
And how established are you on the hockey side in Sweden?
I would say we're pretty well covered. I would say most of the SHL teams is using us. Hockey Allsvenskan, the Swedish Women's League, SPiideo is using SPiideo, and plus the referees is actually using SPiideo as well here. So I would say we're pretty well connected when it comes to analytics and development of the Swedish hockey players, I would say.
Yeah, but you're not a hockey guy originally, right? You're a soccer guy.
Yes, I am a football guy. I was brought up here in Malmö, and I played in Malmö FF, the Swedish top tier, and from the academy up to the first team. But then I played professional in the US actually a few years in Minnesota, and that was my background when it comes to sport. When I started at SPiideo for like 5.5 years ago, we were only about 7-8 people back then. So I was the first one who was brought in for us on the sales department here. And we have had some, when we started, we were small and we were chasing and trying to get some teams. And I think Rögle and Frölunda, that was the first team that we got into to SPiideo, and then Zug in Switzerland. Those are, I think, that was the first 3 teams that we had. We were focused on soccer, football, and then ice hockey as well. I had a colleague of mine who started, and he had a big connection and a lot of networking in soccer, so he continued to do work on that, and I start working a little bit with ice hockey. I can't really skate, to be honest, but with my experience from team sports and in a high level, I saw a lot of similarities to ice hockey, I would say, in that sense. And fairly quickly we grow that business into a very interesting one. And today we have, I would say, installations all over Europe in ice hockey. In that sense, we are fully covered in the Danish Metalligaen, the Fjordkraft League, and in Norway, all teams is using SPiideo there, and also a lot of installations in Switzerland, in NLA and NLB, for example.
Okay.
And if we go over to the US, we have, I think, over 100 installations in high school ice hockey in Minnesota, for example, and that's a good. I would say that's a very good reference. I would say for ice hockey in the US.
Great. Well, and I'm sure, I don't know how much experience you have with what is available here. What the most common that we see is Live Barn or Hockey TV. Hockey TV, which is more of a, I believe most of the junior leagues are using Hockey TV, but I think that is actually someone that is filming it and recording, and not automatic AI.
Yeah.
Live Barn is pre-established. We have it at the local rink here, not necessarily usable from an analytics standpoint. Is more of a stationary or a panoramic view camera than anything else. So what is
Correct.
What are the components? Because I know you have a hardware component and you have a software component. And how does it, second part, how's it being used? Because I know we have Svensk Hockey TV that airs all the games through the Swedish Hockey Federation. So that system is a little bit different. So talk about the difference and where's it overlap?
Yeah, first of all, we are a software company. We have the hardware, but that's outsourced to a camera provider for us that do that for us. And then we've been focused on developing the software. There's a lot of solutions in the market today, but I would say cameras and analytics systems, etc. But it is such a lot of focus on games. We started on the other side to develop an analytic part, and that's been our strength. Now we have added more stuff to our portfolio, but the analytic part was our biggest thing, I would say. It is our biggest thing. If you have a camera installed, like LiveBard and the other ones, they are just using mainly for games. But when you have a camera there as well, you might as well use it for practice. And when it comes to indoor sports, you usually practice and play the games on the same field. So our solution there was just like, yeah, but use it for practice and form the analytic tool that we have there, so we can help to develop the players. And it's actually what you tend to do in practice, you tend to do in games. It's not the opposite. So here you have a system that you can work live anywhere in the world if you have internet connectivity and be part of what's happening on the ice. And that's both for the coaches and for the players that could be involved in the system that we are doing. So that's a little bit of the difference. I know those other ones also have a little bit of analytics, but that's not their core business. I would say that it's more the streaming of the game that is their business. That's
and I think, when we were talking to Daniel Frank, who's the CEO of Sportway, who was a guest on the podcast before, it was pretty, their objective, their motive is entertainment and for the families and players, and airing, and they've done a phenomenal job in getting coverage of almost all games are out there and live and archived out there. So how does it, so most places then have a camera system for Sportway or Svensk Hockey TV, and then they have different camera systems, and they are, talk about the geographical orientation of where those camera systems are in the rink.
So I would say if you just talk in Sweden now, we have all the SHL, let's say the SHL teams, for example, they all have Svensk Hockey TV as well, just because that's the federation that provides that. All of these teams also have a SPiideo camera, probably right next to it. What we have added is also 2 other cameras that you can get the vision from multiple angles. So you can focus a little bit more on developing details. Let's say goalkeeper coach would be fantastic to have a camera in the ceiling or behind the goal, so really working on the technique for the goalkeeper, for example. Another thing that is kind of unique in our solution is, like, when you step on the ice, everything is always recorded. So when there is a game, we have an auto follow that follows the game, just like the other ones have. but it's specially trained for that sport. So we have an autofollow for ice hockey, but we also have an autofollow for soccer or for basketball, etc. That is trained by us to be perfect for that specific sport. And I think there we have a little bit of difference in that, I will say. But also, let's say you go for training, you do multiple things on the ice at the same time. The game, you're following the game, but for practice, you can do goalkeepers on one side, you can do something else in the middle, or you can do something on the third pitch, on the third. Here, I am, as a coach, or wherever I am, if I have access, I can watch whatever I want. So I can have a bird view to see what everything happens, but if something happens on the right, I can actually move the camera, or it looks like I'm moving the camera, I can zoom in, which means I can be extremely individual. So let's say we have the backs, for example, or the forwards, that specific guy or girl I want to look at, I can actually zoom in and look at how they do in practice, and try to help to develop them. So you can try to, you help the team to develop, the club, I would say, but you're also helping each individual ones. And the kids today, they like to see themselves after a practice. 100% the people go in and watch the mobile phones, for example.
Yep.
Here we can implement that to them in a very easy way. It's extremely user friendly. And before, when you and I played, even if I played football or soccer, but you had a coach that yelled at you, whatever, this is right or wrong. But here we can actually have a discussion, because there would never be a discussion that said, I was there, I was there. Here you can actually show them and say, okay, think about that for next time. And then we continue to develop. And everybody has a little bit of different developing phases, I would say. Some is very, very adapt very quickly, and other ones take maybe a little bit longer time, but at least they can see themselves, which means they can also see the developing they can do for them.
So how does it integrate? What does most of the company or the organizations that, or the teams or the organizations, are you when somebody is a client of SPiideo and they have the Sportway cameras and they have the SPiideo cameras, and they use different things, right? Some use Instat, or people over here use Instat, and it takes the feed from somewhere, like Sportway or Svensk Hockey TV.
Yeah.
And then they have someone in, I think it works, is they have someone in Russia or India or China or somewhere that actually tags the players. Does your system integrate with Instat, or are you basically a competitor to Instat?
Well, what these guys need, they need a feed, some kind of feed, to do their analytics on, to send it to somebody else to does it for you. We have an integrated system that can do it for them. We have teams, of course, that sends it to Instat, or they send it to Sport Contract, or whatever you have. What you're missing on when you're sending something away is like you're giving away the content, the rights and everything, but it's just like you take away, when I'm sending to something else, I'm just sending the autofollow version. So that's what they will see. But if I want to go in and watch something else, that I can't do that when I get that back.
Yeah.
Then it's better maybe to get tags implemented. If you're using Dartfish, for example, you can import Dartfish tags into SPiideo, because that means you can look at SPiideo in the different angles.
What is Dartfish? Explain
Dartfish
that.
Dartfish is a tagging provider as well.
Okay.
There's Zeba, and there's Dartfish. There is Sports Code, for example, that many people use. What we have an extremely strong analytic tool that is very similar to these ones there. But we also know in the highest level, you have multiple things. You have more budget, you can use all kinds of different stuff. But if you go down a level to the youth, even in bigger clubs, you have your budget. So what's more important, to get something else, or whatever? I would say the more footage you can get, the better it will be. You can get, in the US, they love their data. which is fantastic in many ways. But the data is not really worth anything if you can't really use it or work with it. Then it's maybe more powerful to the players to show them a footage of something, and then together with the data, it's fine.
Yeah.
But just getting raw data doesn't help me a whole lot as a player in that sense.
So does SPiideo also provide the similar, so the data analytics when it comes to number of hits, the number of turnovers, the number of, you know, shots from different areas, or that's integrated in your
we have a system that is called Autodata that we can help out with that. Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, so and I want to put a plug on. I guess this was produced by you guys, but it was I ran across a YouTube video, it's 3.5 minute long, of that I thought was really informative, that I'm going to include in the somehow in this either as a link or something. But it was so if you do a Google search or YouTube search for SPiideo and Frölunda, since Frölunda Indians was a organization that's been using SPiideo for a long time. It was a little commercial there, and it had Roger Rönnberg and other people talking about what it is and how they use it, right? So I think that is for those that are visual, you can actually go in and see what the camera looks like and how they use it, and you can actually see them, you know, simulating how they use it from an iPad and so on. The other part, so let's go into the other part about this conversation, which is really what I'm interested in, is now how do you use it and what are the benefits, and specifically how does it work for the juniors? And offline we were having a conversation about, so take an organization like Frölunda, top organization, has an NIU, an academy, that the new guys that are coming in, I think they're the 07 birth year, that are coming into the academy this year. I think it's 07 or 8. I think it's 07s. They may be coming from a smaller organization that doesn't have the budget, but they come in now to the bigger organization, and they are great athletes, but they may not have had this tool. And, you know, what does that do? But I go back to kind of what they are used to. The 2007 birth year, 16-year-old coming in, they are very experienced video game players. They've played since they were 5, and they have their visual, the way that they see the game and the way they play a video game as a visual learner and reactor, from a reaction standpoint, is they're thinking really, really fast. And they're actually not thinking, they're just doing. And the reaction time of what they do and how they improve in the video game is a connection between the eyes and the mind, and then the hands. You know, it's not the feet. They don't have skates on them, but they're playing the game, and they're learning how to improve in the game through that. So that was a long way intro of saying, okay, now the 16-year-old coming in, and they're experienced as a visual learner more than as an auditory learner, and perhaps even more as a practice doing. So how do you take all that in for that new 16-year-old coming into Frölunda? And the academy is now saying, okay, we're going to have video time, right? Walk me through how that works.
Yeah, no, but good explanation there. I myself have a 15-year-old at home, so I can can go back to that. But Frölunda is a good example. Most of the teams that use SPiideo today is using it throughout the club. The first team uses it in a different ways than maybe the 16-year-old, for example. In the 16, 18, or 20s, you're in the developing phase. For every year, you take a new step to become a better player, to understand more, and et cetera, et cetera. And then when you come up to the first team, you're just working on details most of the time. NHL, doesn't matter, whatever. It's all about the details. But to come there, you need to start somewhere, I guess. And with getting footage into practice, the players can see themselves every day. That means, as I said a little bit before, but it's just like they can take, together with the coaches, Frölunda, for example, they have almost weekly schedule for each player. First for the team, okay, these are the parameters we're gonna do, but also individuals. So today, Morgan, you're gonna work on specific things, and then Daniel's gonna work on something else. And then we take step by step, and then we execute it in the games, and then we go back again to the drawing board, look at it. Okay, maybe the defenders talk to each other a little bit. Okay, how was the first 5 shifts, whatever, in the first period? You talk to them, but also individually. And then fairly quickly, you can really see as coaches, okay, where do I need to put maybe more effort into each player to help them instead, and try to create the best player out of that. That's it's.
Do you see a lot of them in the beginning use the system to explain how to run a certain drill, or is it more the important avenues within a drill or a practice section?
Tough question.
I guess it'd be a good question. I need to have Johan Schultz on as a good. He's actually the guy that he posts a lot of he's with Karlskoga and posts a lot of the kind of their practices, details from Karlskoga's first team, and I should have him on and say, how do you use it and what does it do? But I would imagine that because you can zoom in, you can look at an individual detail, or you can look at, how does the answering of what are we trying to accomplish here, right? So we can say, all right, when we're doing this, the idea is that we're simulating this particular scenario and we're trying to force this. I had a really good conversation with Bryant Perrier, who's a Canadian coach for Åmål. So he's in charge of all the juniors in Åmål, J18 and J20. And it was interesting. He had this conversation about how he's developed. He's been coaching for 30 years. And he used to be the authoritarian that says, do this. And everybody says, aye, aye, captain. And then now, and we talked about the progression of the hockey player, who is a lot more, they have so much more information, so they really want to know why. And if you don't explain the why, you're not going to get as much out of them. And I think that it's very difficult to explain why just with auditory, with instructions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember as a kid, I mean, I was always, when I was playing as a youth, I was such a visual guy that somebody told, do this, do that. And I just thought that I was kind of slow or slower than the guy who was always in the first of line. So I adapted, and I never was first in line because I wanted to see what he's talking about. Oh, go here, 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 and then do this. Because the motive was I didn't want to look like a fool and what's called a drill killer. But, when you're 8 or 9, you don't know that it was my first, I'm a visual learner and not auditory.
Yeah.
So what about the elite organization? So how does this work? I mean, you mentioned before that, for example, you work with the Premier League in soccer. Does it work similarly?
Yeah, I would say it's like when it comes to developing, of course, there's different ways to do it. If you take soccer, for example, a Premier League club, massive amount of money, they have everything. But if you go down outside of the first team, down to the academies, they have their budgets it's very slim in that sense. And they try, of course, to try to get the best solution that could help all of them. So if that's a Premier Club or SHL club or NHL team, for example, it's different. NHL, we have a few NHL teams that use SPiideo, and it's quite interesting how they try to using or gonna use it. Or I know one club at least how they use it. And the draft was the last week.
No, it's coming up. It's actually
oh, it's coming up.
It's actually today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then it's perfect. But no, but it's, from what I understand, it's like you draft a lot of players. You spend a lot of money on these players. Maybe one or two will go to the first team directly. The other ones will go to farmer teams. What's happening at the farmer team? Yeah, because you're talking to the head coach or somebody else involved, but sometimes you want to maybe see more. You usually see the games, etc. You can get that, but now install a SPiideo system there instead. Then I can see the guy. Every guy is training. How is he progressing to be ready to go into the first team or go somewhere else? And you as a coach or the coaching staffs around, they can have a fantastic tool here, because I can sit here in Malmö, Sweden, and I can look at all my draft pick that plays in the different AHL teams or wherever they're playing, and I can go in and look at whatever happens on their practice the day to day. And fairly quickly, you can also see like, okay, how quickly are they adjusting, try to get ready for the next step, because they're also taking next step, even if it's in that high in AHL or in NHL for that matter. So that's interesting for their part. But I think it also feedback from NHL is like, just like the software we have, that you can look at different things. Even if you have an NHL game today, if you have, I don't know how many cameras you have, you still miss stuff. And me as an analytic guy, I want to see. I'm just want to watch whatever I want to watch. I'm not gonna. Sometimes I just have to see what's coming from the TV. But with SPiideo, I can actually watch whatever I want. If I want to follow one player the whole time, I will be able to do that and look at those things and work with that. And in NHL, you have a lot of people working on different things. But here you can have one system. You have everything in the same platform to work with in that sense. So it's a pretty smooth progress, I would say, to work with.
Well, how important then, okay, so how important is this within the concept of developing the hockey player, building the hockey IQ, so to speak? And maybe you can talk about it. The same thing goes with the soccer player, of building the soccer IQ, but and how can you give some examples of how they are using it to optimize, right? Versus you don't have a system like this. How do clubs use it in a way that actually, and training with a purpose?
Yeah, no, but again, you have footage of everything you do on ice all the time, which is a huge thing. And the coaches today that can adjust to that. If you have old school coaches, they like to point with their hand, it's like, you do that and that. Today, with all the extra stuff you have around, you will, if you don't use it, I think you will fall behind. Because you have.
How important do you think the other parts about that is instruction versus self instruction? With the system, I imagine that each player has access to the system to be able to go in and look at data or their data, their footage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how does the players, I would imagine that the 16-year-old that coming into academy that hasn't used it, it takes them a while to kind of figure it out. But once they figure it out, how did they use the system where they go in and say,
I would say for most of the time it's fairly easy to learn. It's my 5-year-old, 6-year-old at home can figure it out to get the footage. If you want to dig deeper into the system, yes, it might take a little bit of time. But sometimes the footage, I'm saying that again, but it's maybe the best thing to know and to see that. And together with the coaches or players, they talk to each other as well. They can when they see themselves, they can actually kind of see the progress themselves. And when you have a discussion with the players or other players or the coachings, etc., you can really adjust because everybody had the same picture. Otherwise, you sit in another room and you have the coach say, yeah, but you're going to do that and you're going to do that. And it's like, but here you can actually see, okay, we've been working on this for the last 2 weeks now. Look at the progress that we have today versus that we had for 2 weeks or a month ago.
Yeah.
Small steps. But if you take all these small steps to add up, you become a pretty good player after a while. And if you have a good, and that doesn't matter what kind of whatever sport it is. If you can get that feedback right away and you buy into it, it's amazing. I don't know how many NHL players the SHL have provided in the last 5 years, but I would say it's quite a lot. If you look at it, I think there's over 100 players right now that plays there.
Yeah.
Majority of those guys the last 5 years has brought up in SPiideo one way or another. I'm not taking credit in that sense, but it's like they have a system that works.
Yeah.
And then maybe the first team is maybe using it a little bit different, more details, power play, box plays, etc. But for the developing 16, 18, and 20, I would say it's almost mandatory in all SHL clubs today that use SPiideo.
Yeah.
For developing.
I just think that is you're absolutely right when it comes to, I mean, the perception when I talk to general managers and scouts and coaches here is we really are interested in the Swedish player because he is coming over here with a really good technique, good hockey IQ, understands the game, right? The flaws may be, they may not be as big and physical, and they may not have the compete that the Canadian player has, right? Which is a big focus that they're having now. But I do think that it's an important part of, it's the three-legged stool of how do you become skilled in the task, skating, shooting, passing, hitting, the muscle memory of doing the task, shooting. How do you build the body? How do you train with a purpose to become an explosive, a injury resistant, and a durable player that can execute the task that we set on the ice? But I think this part is such an important, and I would say an often overlooked piece that the elite athlete should pay attention to at a young age. And it's actionable, right? It's something that you can do something about, and you can gain an edge by improving your mind, improving the understanding of the game, understanding where you are, so you can then leverage that in training and get better. So when, for you do it every time all the time for the one time, which it really matters, is you're going to be in that position,
be
able to now make that move, to be able to make that play in that one game.
Yeah, no, but it's all about reputations, and if you can start in early age to take away certain habits, you already passed some of those things and ready to go to the next level, I would say. But usually Scandinavian or Swedish player are they're good with the language. They are pretty individual, good, but also as a team player. If you look at the NHL players and the Swedish ones in the NHL or other leagues, they're doing a good job. They're how do you say, the lowest? How do you say?
They have a high lowest level.
Yes, yeah.
If you translate it from the Swedish way of saying it.
So no, but that's why I think they're doing good, and also the coaching staff it's very good, I would say, in Sweden, to help out to give those players the best.
Yeah. So rounding out here, what is where's the next chapter? I'm sure that the growth plan is always about improving technology, getting it out there and getting used more. But what's the next 5 years look like for a company like SPiideo?
Yeah, no, the whole market is massive right now with streaming and all that kind of stuff that comes in. Let's say in 3, 4, 5 years, you will have cameras in any rink or any soccer field out there, at least here in the US or in Sweden or Europe, or in that sense, because that's where we're going. That's where we're heading to, I would say, in that sense. Yeah, and we are pretty big now in streaming and the media part, which means we have kind of two legs in like when you do the analytics and all that, you can also stream it at the same time. There's a big tournament comes up now, Gocha Cup, which is the biggest soccer, like the USA Cup in Minnesota in the soccer, for example. But Gocha Cup, it's a 1 week. We're going to stream 2,000 games just through SPiideo cameras, and then that's going to be amazing for everybody that comes and watch that. I was saying people or parents all over the world can be part of that and see their kids play live soccer in a small field in Gothenburg. So that's where we're heading right now. And at the same time, the teams that use SPiideo can actually use it for analytics in Gothenburg if they want to do that.
Yeah.
Or if I'm the analytic guy sitting at home, I can still do my analytics even if it's in Gothenburg or wherever it is in that sense.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. Technology is always going to continue to evolve. It is my feeling is it's an avenue. I mean, is it the most important part? Maybe not. Maybe skating is more important, but I think it's often overlooked. It doesn't take very long to build it into your overall training plan. Train with a purpose. So what am I trying to do? Well, I ought to spend a little bit of time looking at ways to improve. How do I improve my game? So on and so forth. So it's going to be fun to kind of watch. You were gracious enough to give me the login here, so I've looked at different games and how the different companies are using it in both soccer and hockey. So definitely fun to watch moving forward. So I'm trying to get it in where my son is playing, but they're not there yet. So we'll see how that goes. So
I'm working on that.
Yeah, I know.
No, but it is interesting. The last 5 years here now has been growing very quickly. I think we have over 3,000 installations worldwide. So it's going very fast, and we don't see any stop whatsoever when it comes to that. It's just going to be more and more and more. But we are helping out hopefully a lot with developing. I think we are a very, very good game tool, but for developing and all that kinds, when it comes to hockey, we're probably the best provider out there today.
Yeah,
that's if you see to help in developing, I would say for sure.
Yeah. So what's the best way for those who are interested in SPiideo, and whether it's in the US or Europe or in Sweden, what's the best way to reach you? What's the best way to reach information about SPiideo?
Just on the webpage, SPiideo.com, or Morgan at SPiideo.com. They can for sure send me an email if they want to do that. That's no problem at all.
And of course, it spells SPiideo, and the website is SPiideo. Is it .net too, or is that the application?
Application.com.
Yeah. So the application that I have in front of me, I logged in to .net and looking at it, but and I would encourage everybody to go to YouTube and just look at the different content. It gives you a good understanding of what we're talking about.
You have that on the webpage. If you just click into the webpage, you can go on to ice hockey, and there is a bunch of stuff you can look into there.
Yeah, and I'm gonna seek out Yuan now. I think that's a good one, since he was the one who kind of opened my eyes to SPiideo from the first time. So I'm gonna bug him and say, hey, let's get on the podcast here. So thanks.
Yuan is a great guy.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on, and we'll stay in touch for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks.